Alright everyone, this video is going to be about landscape painting. Now, even if you're not selecting landscape painting as part of your project, and you can hear my cat meowing in the background, she wants to go outside, I'm not letting her. Anyway, even if you're not selecting landscape painting as your final project, this is still going to be a good video for you to watch because it's going to be about building depth into your paintings. And some of the sort of key ideas that go into that are things like atmospheric perspective. So I'll talk about that in the video. I'm going to show you both this painting and another painting later on that has a different palette. Approaching landscape painting in a strategic way in order to create depth is essential. In this video, you will see that I begin with areas that are farther away and work my way from the background to the foreground, or the area closest to me. This approach will help you create a sense of atmospheric perspective. In atmospheric perspective, as objects recede in space, they become lighter and bluer. As objects are closer to the foreground, we will start to see more intense colors and values. I'm making sure to keep my background layers more neutralized, both in terms of value and color. I'm not using any intense colors like phthalo green or cadmium yellow. As I move forward in the painting into the foreground, I then introduce more intense darks and more vibrant colors. This helps the foreground layer pop forward and creates a sense of depth. Here's my final painting. Now let's review the approach for landscape painting again. We're going to take this layer by layer, moving from the background, then to the middle ground, and finally the foreground. In each layer, begin with the darkest values and then move to the lighter values. Remember that as objects are farther back in space, they become lighter, bluer, and less saturated. Save your dark values, bright light values, and saturated colors for the foreground. This strategic approach will help you control the values in your landscape and create a sense of depth. Map in the major form sphere painting. You can see here I drew in the contour lines and I've mapped out the major elements in my painting. I drew in the basic forms for the grasses in the front, but you don't have to get incredibly detailed in this layer. I drew my lines in directly with paint, but you can also use fine charcoal. Start by addressing the elements furthest away in the background. I first mapped in the sky, beginning on the darker side and then moving into the lighter side. Address your background and middle ground. Again, within each layer, begin by addressing the darker values and move your way into the light. Remember to keep these layers fairly neutral in terms of both value and color. You want them to stay back. If you have really dark darks, that will come forward. If you have really intense colors or really warm colors, those will also come forward. Keep things lighter and bluer. Place all of the major values in the foreground. In the foreground, you can introduce more chromatic colors, darker darks, and if you see them, brighter lights. Everywhere on your canvas should have some paint down now. Once everything is established, you can see what you want to pull forward and also what you want to push farther back. Now it is time to refine and revisit previous layers. In my painting, I wanted to push the background elements even farther back, so I made them lighter and bluer. I also softened the edges of the background elements. Blurred and blended edges will push things farther back. I brought out parts of the grass in the foreground with darker values and more intense colors and more detail. There's thicker paint and harder edges in the foreground, which pulls things forward. Here's the next painting that I'll be showing you the process of and that we'll be discussing. So it's a really different type of painting. Obviously, there's not the same greens happening. It's much more just kind of browns and blues. This was working from a photo reference that I took off of the Oregon coast. So it's all very neutral. Even so, even though most of this painting is dealing with neutrals, we're still dealing with the same ideas from atmospheric perspective. So more intense values, so really dark values, really light values are going to come forward. More chromatic colors are also going to come forward. So again, even though a lot of this is neutral, still the thing that I want to come forward, which is this piece of driftwood, There's more chromatic color use in here, which helps bring it forward. Now let's look at the process video for this painting. This is the meowing culprit. Her name is Wednesday. Hi, Wednesday! Finley is my other cat, but he usually stays pretty quiet during my videos. Thank you, Finley! The subject here is different, but the approach is the same. I'm beginning with the background, I'm working from dark to light in each layer, and I'm moving my way forward. When I get to the piece of driftwood, which is in the foreground, then I'm going to introduce more intense and dark shadows and more chromatic browns. I'm also using paint application to create depth. Areas that I want to recede, I am blending and blurring. Areas that I want to come forward, I am applying thicker paint. Remember, if you want something to go back, you want to push it lighter, bluer, and neutralize the warm color that is there. Here's the final painting. No matter the kind of landscape you choose, keep atmospheric perspective in mind. Work in a strategic way to achieve a sense of depth. Consider how paint application can also push things back or pull things forward.